What has been the real impact of Vladimir Putin's leadership on Russia? This is a question that provokes diverse responses, stirring up a spectrum of emotions and opinions. Some laud Putin for restoring stability and national pride after the tumultuous 90s, crediting him with rejuvenating the country and propelling it towards economic growth and global prominence. Yet contrasting views persist. Join us as we delve into the timeline of Putin's leadership and its profound effects on Russia. Vladimir Putin's rise to power begins in 1999. In the midst of a tumultuous era for Russia, marked by economic instability and political uncertainty, a new figure emerged on the scene. His name was Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer and the head of the Federal Security Service. In August 1999, Putin was appointed as prime minister by then-President Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin, who was grappling with health issues and political opposition, saw in Putin a person of strength and resolve, someone who could steer the ship of the Russian state through the stormy waters of the post-Soviet era. But who was this man who seemed to come out of nowhere? To the public, Putin was somewhat of an enigma. His background in intelligence work shrouded him in a cloak of mystery. Yet he also projected an image of stability and decisiveness, qualities that resonated with many Russians who had grown weary of the chaos of the 1990s. When Yeltsin resigned on the last day of 1999, Putin became acting president. A few months later, in March 2000, he was elected president in his own right, winning a majority of the vote. His message of restoring stability and national pride struck a chord with the electorate. One of the hallmarks of Putin's presidency has been economic growth. Under Putin's leadership, Russia experienced significant economic growth. This was reflected in the country's gross domestic product, or GDP, which is a measure of the total value of all goods and services produced in a country. During Putin's first two terms from 2000 to 2008, Russia's GDP grew by 7% annually on average. This means that the size of Russia's economy nearly doubled in just 8 years. But what factors contributed to this impressive growth? First off, high oil prices played a significant role. Russia is one of the largest producers of oil in the world. So when oil prices soared in the early 2000s, Russia's economy reaped the benefits. The revenues from oil exports filled the state coffers, allowing the government to invest in various sectors and stimulate further economic growth. Secondly, Putin implemented a series of economic reforms. He simplified the tax system, introducing a flat income tax rate of 13%. This encouraged compliance and increased tax revenues. He also facilitated the entry of foreign investment into the country. As a result, Russia's economy became more open and competitive, attracting businesses from around the globe. However, it's important to note that this economic growth did not benefit everyone equally. While the overall wealth of the country increased, so did income inequality. The gap between the rich and the poor widened significantly. This is a complex issue that we'll discuss further in a later scene. Despite these challenges, the economic growth under Putin's leadership has undeniably transformed Russia. It has restored a sense of national pride and stability that was lacking in the turbulent 90s. It has also allowed Russia to regain its footing on the global stage. This economic success has been a key factor in Putin's popularity. Stay tuned as we delve into the global influence of Putin in the next scene. Under Putin, Russia has reasserted its position on the global stage. This isn't just a claim, it's a reality that can be seen in the nation's involvement in international affairs and its relationships with other countries. Take a look at Russia's role in international conflicts. From the Syrian civil war to the crisis in Ukraine, Putin's Russia has not been a silent observer. Instead, it has been a decisive player, often tipping the scales in favor of its allies and against those it perceives as threats. This interventionist approach has not been without controversy, but it has undeniably demonstrated Russia's global influence. Let's also consider Russia's relationships with other countries. Under Putin, Russia has cultivated alliances with powerful nations like China and India, while also maintaining its traditional ties with countries in Eastern Europe and Central Asia. These relationships have not only bolstered Russia's global standing, but they have also served as a counterweight to Western influence. At the same time, Putin's Russia has been unafraid to challenge Western powers, from the United States to the European Union. It has resisted Western sanctions, engaged in cyber warfare and information campaigns, and even allegedly interfered in foreign elections. Whether you view these actions as aggressive or defensive, they have undoubtedly made Russia a force to be reckoned with on the global stage. It's also worth noting how this increased global influence has contributed to national pride. For many Russians, Putin's leadership has restored their nation's status as a great power. They see Russia not as a country in decline, but as a country on the rise, capable of shaping world events rather than being shaped by them. In conclusion, Putin's leadership has brought Russia back into the global spotlight. It has reasserted the country's presence on the world stage, often in ways that have been controversial, but always in ways that have been impossible to ignore. So, whether you admire or criticize Putin, there's no denying his impact. Putin's leadership has undeniably brought Russia back into the global spotlight. However, Putin's leadership has not been without controversy. A fair share of criticism has been aimed at his leadership style and policies. Central to these criticisms are allegations of corruption, suppression of political opposition, and human rights violations. Let's delve into the corruption allegations first. Putin's reign has been marred with accusations of widespread corruption. Critics argue that under his rule, a culture of crony capitalism has emerged, where close allies and friends have been bestowed with lucrative government contracts and positions of power. This has led to a concentration of wealth and power among a select few, fostering a system that lacks transparency and accountability. Moving on to the suppression of political opposition. Putin's critics claim that he has systematically suppressed political opposition, stifling any potential threats to his power. This has been done through a variety of means, including alleged media control, politically motivated prosecutions, and even accusations of election rigging. This perceived intolerance of dissent has raised concerns about the state of democracy in Russia. Lastly, let's touch on the human rights violations. Putin has been accused of numerous human rights abuses during his time in power. These include alleged crackdowns on free speech, the suppression of protests, and the mistreatment of minority groups. Critics argue that these actions demonstrate a disregard for the fundamental principles of human rights. These controversies have had a profound impact on how Putin is perceived, both domestically and internationally. Within Russia, these issues have fueled discontent among some segments of the population, leading to protests and calls for change. Internationally, these controversies have strained Russia's relations with the West, leading to sanctions and a general sense of mistrust. However, it's important to remember that these criticisms represent one side of the story. Many Russians continue to support Putin, crediting him with restoring stability and national pride to the country. The reality, as always, is complex and multifaceted. These controversies have cast a shadow over Putin's leadership. As we move forward, it's crucial to keep these criticisms in mind, while also recognizing the positive changes that have occurred under Putin's rule. So how will history judge Putin's leadership of Russia? This question, as we've seen, is not an easy one to answer. Putin's leadership is a tapestry of complexities with threads of both commendation and condemnation. From the ashes of the turbulent 90s, Putin rose to power, carrying with him the promise of stability. Under his administration, Russia saw significant economic growth. The nation's GDP rose, and poverty rates fell. The economy, once on the brink of collapse, was now standing firm, thanks to an increased focus on domestic production and a bolstered energy sector. On the global stage, Putin reasserted Russia's influence. From the Middle East to the Arctic, his strategic maneuvers have earned Russia a seat at the table of world powers. Yet his leadership has not been without controversy. Criticisms of his governance style, allegations of corruption, and questions over democratic values have sparked heated debates around the world. These are realities that cannot be ignored when assessing his leadership. Putin's legacy is a blend of national rejuvenation and global resurgence, juxtaposed with internal tensions and international scrutiny. His reign has been a period of transformation for Russia, a time of both growth and growing pains. Only time will tell how Putin's legacy will be remembered. But one thing is clear: his leadership has left an indelible mark on Russia.